Okay.
Hello, Tahitia.
Hello, Melonya. How are you?
I'm ailing today. My eyes jacked up. I'm a mess today, but I'm here.
And that's
Half the battle.
100%. I
Happy,
wasn't even gonna say half. I was like 100%.
that's 100%.
Showing
Happy,
up is 100%.
happy Friday, and welcome to MT Fridays, where we are filling the brain drain one unscripted conversation at a time. I'm Melonya, and you are
Tahisha.
Tahisha. For those of you who may not be familiar with us, we get together every Friday and we just talk about stuff. We talk about whatever is on our mind, anything from politics to relationships to science to whatever. We talk
Yes.
about it. So, what are you bringing to the table today, Tahisha?
Oh my goodness. I had so many thoughts as I was getting ready for today's MT Friday. So many thoughts that I was like, it needs 2 hours. When the second hour where I just cursed, and then like the first hour where I'm like very professional for LinkedIn. Because this does go to LinkedIn too. But like I definitely was like, oh, there's things I want to say that like are not conducive for the LinkedIn crowd. Um, that said, I am talking about American citizens. They're like, when are we gonna kind of realize some of our rights might be being eroded as democracy goes on a decline? It's a
Oh,
big topic.
we're keeping it light this
I'm
morning.
keeping it light. I'm keeping it light because it's all about love and lightness. Because it's also Good Friday,
Oh,
right? Isn't it Good Friday?
you know what? I'm not religious, so
I'm
my
not religious either.
I had a manager. My manager said to me, "What are you doing for Easter?" I was like, "Easter? When's Easter?" And she's like, "Sunday." I was like, "Oh." She's like, "You're not doing brunch or anything?" I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm having an issue with my eye. You're a nurse. Tell me what's wrong." All right, so you're doing immigration today. I'm talking about yesterday. I sided with a Karen. Yeah, it happened. I saw a Karen in action, and I was like, I'm on her side. So here we go. Let's get started. So,
All
what are we talking
righty.
about in terms of immigration?
Well, so what I'm really talking about is, the fact that there is a lot of stuff going on right now in the country when it comes to, and I don't want to go too hard on this because it does make me upset. But there are people being picked up right now who are not necessarily the immigrants that the individuals
Criminals.
who might have voted for Trump,
Mhm.
because I'm just going to name it, who they probably were thinking about when they thought of like he's going to round up immigrants. There are people in this country who have come as refugees who may look like they are they have tattoos, like they may look like they are gang members, I guess, to these roaming droves of ICE officials going out and rounding people up, but they're actually not. They're here on refugee status from the countries that they were fleeing from, and some of them have been deported back, not back, but to CECOT, CECOT, which is the notorious human rights prison that Bukaleli is like overseas. And so far, we have not been able to get back those people who were sent accidentally. Um, I guess we are not as strong as we thought we were, but we can't seem to get them back. And the US doesn't seem to be very concerned because it's sort of like, well, they're no longer under US jurisdiction with law. So, like, what does it matter? And so I just wanted to float the idea, if we could do something like this to people who have, where it's a little deeper dive into like, was this done legally? Were there any crimes? Why are they here? There's 179 people, 100 and not people. They are people, but I'm going to say 179 men that we know have been sent who do not fit the criteria that the administration said they were going to use to send people away. So, if they can do that to these 179 people, what stops them from applying this to other people in the United States who are here as citizens? And there are, I believe there's like one person who is a US born citizen who has been picked up, who is sitting in a prison in Florida right now, waiting to be sent to this place. So it's very concerning because if you can use this sort of like they're outside of American law, um, there's no rescue for you. And in this prison, and it's been shown, how they house people. They are in very small spaces. They are in their cell for almost 23 and a half hours a day. It has minimal room to it. There's no, unlike prisons here, some prisons here may be bad, but they're under US jurisdiction, and people have rights in these prisons that we have in the United States, even the privatized ones. Over there, there's absolutely nothing. At this particular prison, there is no education, there is no really care for these people. So that's what I was thinking about. And if you use it against dissidents, if we start sending people who are objecting to what's being done in the country, it becomes even worse. Your eye looks a hot mess.
It is a mess. I'm
What'd
in
you
pain.
do to it?
I
What's
don't
in
know.
it? You scratch your cornea?
I don't know.
I'm not an eye nurse.
I just woke up like that. Here's the thing. Here's the problem. And I'm glad you brought this up because more of us should be talking about these folks who have been I hate the word disappeared. That's just not the right word. Kidnapped. They've been kidnapped. And that's the real. There's a person that we all know. His name is what's his name? Abrigo, um,
Kilmer?
uh,
Kilmer Abrigo?
of Kilmer Abrigo, who we know is not a criminal. We know he's a
It was
father,
a
married
clerical error.
married to an American citizen, has a child who is, I think, autistic and needs
Mhm.
care, and he's a caregiver. And we all know, everyone, the whole world knows that this man is guilty of nothing. And also, to be very clear to those people who are like, well, if you commit a crime, um, if you if you overstay your visa or these types of situations, and I'm not saying that he's in that category, it is a civil offense, not a criminal offense. So we're
Yes.
taking people that may have some civil offenses, and I'm not saying he's in that group,
Mhm.
and we're treating them like criminals, like someone who has committed a felonious crime, right? And let's not ever forget that it is a part of our constitutional rights to have due process.
Yes.
But here's the thing. Americans see, when I stopped to think about how little I was paying attention to what was going on in our country, it makes me very angry at myself because I should have been more aware. See, back in 2000, whenever 9/11 happened, was it 2001, 2000, whatever year that was, when they started rounding up Muslim people and putting them in Guantanamo Bay, they did that without due process. And no one, no, we were like, well, that's jacked up. But we were on the grind, right? We're doing what we need to do as Americans, which is work, 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 and
Yes.
not pay attention to anything else. But people have, those folks who were in Guantanamo Bay for years and years, and that was one disappointment that I had with the Obama presidency. I was hoping that he would address that he would remove or give due process to those people who were being held there, and
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 tortured in
and
some
and
cases.
he didn't, and that's a stain on his presidency. But we accepted that, what, 24 years ago, 25 years ago, and now we're in a place where people are pulled off the street by, I don't know, and because by our modern day Gestapo, right? Because you don't know, they're not dressed in any particular kind of way, right? They're in unmarked cars. You don't know who is being kidnapped and done away with. And there's no records of these folks. And that is and I don't know if anybody who's a flag waving American is okay with that, then you are not in favor of a democracy, because that's not how democracies work.
Yeah. And there's and there's a lot of talk too when you look. And so I like to, I hate to say that Facebook is sometimes the temperature of the United States, but, I think it is kind of the temperature of the United States when you look at social media platforms, because there's a good mix of generations on there. Maybe you won't find as many like Generation Alpha, well, they're really little, but Generation Z on there, but there's a good mix, and you get to kind of get the sense of like, well, what are people thinking about this? Because I tend to like pick people who are maybe outside of my algorithm to kind of like see this. And I think for the most part, most people are feeling so overwhelmed by just the amount of things that come out every day in the news, that is very easy for us to lose the thread on some of these really important things that the US government is doing right now. And that's the immigration piece. So I think for me, there's three things that I think are going on that are terrifying and lean towards the decline of democracy, which in the US here, which I believe we have been graded right now as a declining democracy. I forgot which organization recently graded us as a democracy in decline. But the three things are how we treat our immigrants. And people coming into this country, how we treat them, the rights that they have. The other thing is how we treat our citizens who are disabled, what healthcare rights we acknowledge for them. And there is, RFK out there saying like we need to cure disabled people because they're, or specifically he was talking about autistic people, because they're not contributors to our taxes, which is not true. So that speaks to like we're getting rid of people who can't like financially contribute in the way that this society thinks they should. And then the other piece is education, because they're getting rid of education. And we know that we've been in decline when it comes to literacy. And literacy isn't just being able to read, the social media text beneath the posts, but it's being able to read complex ideas and comprehend that. And so I knew we were on a decline literacy wise years ago as a nurse educator, when I was being told that for our patients, most things had to be written at a fifth grade level. And so for education, for the general public, we've been writing a lot of things at a fifth grade level for a long time. We've been writing a lot of things with the idea that the American public really is reading on a fifth grade level. But if you think about that, the complex literacy that's needed to understand what is rapidly happening in this country, I don't know if we have the critical thinking skills to really get that there's a lot going on. And, what does this mean to us as people? What does it mean to got the middle class in the United States? And why are we focused on these areas like, these people don't earn money, these people don't deserve your compassion. Money is not a reason to be compassionate to people. We literally have a statue that says, give me your tired, right? Like like we said to the world, come to us, we will embrace you, we will protect you, you will find refugee, like, here in our country. And now it's like we're like, yeah, that costs too much money, so we don't want to do it anymore. But
I think
so
there's a
many
lot
of
of
us are
things.
here from that.
I think there's a lot of things to, here's the point. I make, that we're in a state right now that you have to do something as a citizen every day to save the democracy. The other day I called, Schumer is our state representative. I call his office. I call other people in other districts offices too, to say, yeah, you're doing a great job. Thank you for standing up for this, or I'm doing this, podcast, right? I use my social media to share true information, but I mean, there's so many. Oh, who's that? Hello, we've got a visitor. I'll be reaching out to you about the coaching services and program. Thank you.
Yes,
Yes,
support
absolutely.
Black entrepreneurship,
Please do.
especially
Thank
now.
you. Thank you. She's one of the sweetest souls in the world. Thank you for tuning in today. But I think that, I feel like I'm like a person with their hair on fire, because I'm screaming at us that we have to be involved in this democracy. This democracy doesn't work when we the people, the government that's for the people, by the people, of the people, when we don't show up, this is what we get. Nobody is representing us. And if you go back into our history, right, not just Black history, but our history as a country, it was taxation without representation that caused a revolution.
Yes.
Right. And so when you look at all of the programs that are being cut, right, or being gutted so that they fail, right, a mandate for,
Regulations not being enforced so
but but
that
but
you don't care about them.
but asking elderly people, in order to contact the social security department or whatever, you got to go through X, right? So now you're trying to build up your platform, but also you're talking about people who may not be technologically savvy, right, who are used to picking up a phone and doing things. Or you have to go into your office, into one of the offices, to get your services, but you're closing and gutting offices, right? So that we don't have a place to go. I don't understand. Now there are people out there who have supported Trump. Okay, you wanted lower prices for eggs. All right. But did you want the other things? Did you want the gutting of your Constitution? Did you want, in the Constitution, our rights? Did you want to not have due process? Because here's the thing, if you listen to the man and he does exactly what he says he's going to do, he
Yes, he
says
always
to El
does.
Salvador, you need to build 5 more prisons because we're going to send American citizens there. He's telling you, he's
He's already
foreshadowing.
told us. And
He's,
so,
I'm
yes,
not
we
finished.
need to be afraid.
We don't need to be afraid. We need to
No,
get
we
off
do.
our asses and do something.
No, I say fear is a big driver for
Yes, but you know
action.
what? But right here's the thing, people are shut down from fear and they're overwhelmed. Well, the time to be overwhelmed is over. It's done, y'all. This is the time to act. So, what are we doing? Right? What are we doing? We had a march, a protest, where millions of people came out. How much coverage did that get?
Well, I think he said they were paid.
But come on, right? America's broke, right? We ain't got enough money to pay millions of people to march. All right, let's get real, right? Come on, let's get real. So some people are marching, right? Some people have economic boycotts going on. Some people are organizing grassroots, right? But if you are not doing anything, then you are complicit. And I'm just saying that. If this is a
Absolutely.
time, this is historic, y'all. This is a historic time.
And probably the most powerful thing you can do is to vote the way that your heart is leaning. Vote for,
We
because
can't talk about
there
voting
are
right now.
midterm, no, because there are midterm elections and special elections going on, and if that is happening in your local area, this is your chance to use your voice in a powerful way to send a message. Yes, there were some elections where there were candidates who were put forth who did not win. But more than ever in certain areas, they didn't lose by much, if that makes sense. So if elections are coming up, if elections are happening this year for you, join in on those. If you support what that person is saying, join in and promote them so that when it's their time and those elections are going on in your town or your city or wherever you are, your state, that they have the power behind them to get elected. Now is not the time to not participate in the voting system. The other thing is make sure that you can vote, because what's very important is the SAVE Act passed. And for women, we need to be aware, if you have changed your name, make sure you have all the documentation you need and make sure that you will be eligible and your vote will count when you vote. So that's why I'm talking about voting, because in some cases that's going to take people time, because as we shut down these offices, right? Offices that would have handled some of these documents, it's going to take longer. Just like the Real ID, people are waiting to get appointments. If it was not, and I'm talking about the driver's license here, just how like people are having to wait months and months for that. Think about your voting status and get it right now before something shifts and changes and you are not allowed to vote.
Get involved in your local elections. Get involved on locally, and get involved in federal elections. Because here's the thing: in the 2024 election, especially, and it's not unusual that there is a greater number of Black votes that are pulled out of and discarded. That is a reality. So when I talk about voting, we can't wait until the election comes. We can't sit back and go, well, in that next election, I'm going to vote differently, because who's to say there is going to be an election, right? But if there is, you do need to know that you do need to have the right, unfortunately, right. 1930 Germany all over again. It is. And again, this is not the time to be overwhelmed. We are all overwhelmed. This is really depressing. And I said to a friend the other day, I said, unless I leave this country, I'm going to spend my latter years fighting fascism. That is not what I signed up for. But this is where we are.
And the truth is, we are kind of living with so many generations, right? All at the same time. And some of them have distanced themselves from our past, which was horrific, right? It's so far, it seems so long ago. People don't remember. But, for those of us, and I'm making an appeal to boomers, Xers, I'm an Xer, millennials, like, come on.
Oh,
We remember the pain of 9/11. My mother remembers the pain of Germany, and her father fighting. My grandfather fought, both my grandfathers fought in world wars to prevent, this type of action that's happening in our country. We literally had a civil war over the rights of a group in our country itself. Like, yes, some of it was about money and
it's all about
capitalism.
money.
It Everything's about money, right? But if we want to not be known as a democracy in decline, we have to start preparing for the elections that are going to be coming. We have to start enrolling. Like, what is it? Like only 60% voted during even
You got
that,
to be
even
active.
yes,
You got to be
we
active.
have to get out and vote. We have to, if you're not registered to vote, get registered,
And you
because
have
who knows if you'll be able to.
And you have to be in contact with the people who are representing you. Don't,
Yes.
regardless if they're
They
Republican
don't
or
work for this
Democrat,
administration, they work for the
they work
people.
for us. We elected them, and they have a responsibility. They have sworn an oath to the Constitution.
Yes. And
We're seeing a president right now who, and I am so distraught over the foundations of this government crumbling. There was a point in my life where you had esteem for the Supreme Court. Now it has become a political tool, right? And the president is ignoring the things that the Supreme Court has now mandated them to do, as it relates to this. We were talking about immigration. If you're just joining us, right? And it's not immigration. It is the kidnapping of human beings, putting them, incarcerating them in a foreign land that does not have the same human rights that we say are part of our foundation. And they are not, they've been given no due process. So they could be in these jails for the rest of their lives.
Yes.
And
And
we have a responsibility as citizens to be of the people, for the people, by the people, that part of government. We cannot afford to be afraid. We cannot afford to be confused. So, yes, if you're a woman and you've changed your name, you need to have a birth certificate or passport in order to prove your ID. Reach out to your family and communities. And if you are a being, if you've got the money to support some folks who don't have that, join national, local organizations, right? That are organizing, that have a plan forward. There are things to do, but if you are doing nothing, if you have done nothing, you are complicit.
we have to get active. And I know it is scary. It is scary to get active because there is a retaliatory nature to this administration that we have not seen. Well, that's not 100% true. I can think of a time when there's been a retaliatory government like this, and that was during the when they aggressively pursued anyone who they thought was a communist here. Yes,
McCarthy.
yes, so McCarthyism. So it's almost like a combination of
It's
McCarthyism,
worse.
yes, it's much worse than that. But, this is not the and even then, most people did not agree with what was going on. But if we want to go back to that type of fearful country, then be silent now, okay? Because it's only gonna get worse. And, so sh I asked ChatGPT because, I always feel like ChatGPT can, like, sometimes give you some interesting answers. So I asked ChatGPT, what should Americans be concerned about, what is going on in our country? And that's what I was trying to find. So what it told me, and this is based on the latest what's going on in our government. For those who don't know, birthright citizenship is back on the chopping block for Americans. So there was something that happened, I think it was within the past 2 days, where the Supreme Court is going to be looking at birthright citizenship. So that's the 14th Amendment, which guarantees citizenship to anyone born on U.S. soil. So what it said to me was it said, why, and this is what it titled it, why Americans must wake up now. Not later, but now. And it said, and it gave me a list of things. And it was number one is that birthright citizenship is on the chopping block. And so that means because President 47 is challenging that right with an executive order, which could strip citizenship from children of undocumented immigrants, what that means is if this is successful, it is going to impact the following people. And this is what ChatGPT is telling me: Black people, Latinos, and Asian Americans who already face documentation barriers. It also said it's expanding its deportation powers, and that is a slippery slope. This is AI saying, "Hey, you guys need to be worried about this." It says using outdated laws like the Alien Enemies Act, This administration has broadened its deportation authority, even targeting green card holders, right? Like that's something, and activists. History shows that Black immigrants are deported. Like we haven't even talked about Black immigrants, okay? That's what's coming next at disproportionately higher rates. This tactic of targeting non citizens usually rests easier with us because, we think of them as not us. But it is so easy, according to ChatGPT, for that type of mentality to be moved to anyone who is marginalized. And it wrote anyone marginalized. Wake up. Wake up now. It also added low literacy plus high disinformation equals a dangerous combination. So it said to me, over 50% of US adults read below a sixth grade level. That makes them more susceptible to manipulation and misinformation and less empowered to resist authoritarian measures. And it wrote, this is not accidental. Disempowered citizens are easier to control. It went on and on with this list of like all this stuff that is going on. But if you think about it, I said, should we be like, because because the president has said, hey, don't be panicking. Like, you just need to like rest and lean in, and it's all going to work out in the end. AI doesn't agree. And I don't agree watching everything that's
Well, you
going on
know
and
what,
comparing.
ChatGPT, you might be next to be deported. I'm just saying.
Well, ChatGPT should be worried because at one point they were thinking of giving it what, like workers' rights, identity rights. I don't think that will happen now.
But here's the thing. This is what so if you're joining us, we talk about all things, right? See, I'm really nervous about getting my information from Chat
Oh,
GPTs and
it
these
can be
AIs,
wrong.
because there's going to come a time when they are going to be a program to program us. And right now,
That's why I like to I like to ask it questions
so
like
right now
that.
it's telling you the truth. 5 years from now, that response might be, there's nothing to worry about, right?
Well, 5 years from now, uh, we probably won't be asking those questions because we won't, have the capacity to do that. I probably would not be allowed to ask that question. Which brings me to a question for you and for our audience. Stay and fight or leave this country to the chaos it seems to be descending into. What's your opinion in the moment right now? If you could leave, would you leave? And
Yes.
where would you go? All right, where would you go?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. What I Because here's the thing. This is the truth of the matter. I just don't think that I think it's really inhumane for people to have to fight to be seen as a human all of their life, generation after generation after generation. And I was watching something on YouTube the last couple of days. It was about farmers and Black farmers, and they were talking about why Black farmers are not, up in arms like white farmers are right now. And the simple answer to that is because they haven't received all the government handouts that white farmers have. So they've been doing it on their own all along. But then it went back into the history of farming, Black farmers in this country. And at one point, after slavery, Black folks had nothing. They started to acquire land and farms. At one point, they had about 19% owned about 19% of the farms in the country. Now it's 1%. And it talked about historically how Black farmers were bullied, cheated, all sorts of things, land grabs or whatever, and tossed out of the farming industry. And this one man, talked about how he paid $750,000 for his farm. He was on. He said, "I'm on my last year. I only got $50,000 to pay, and before I owned my farm." And that's when Everybody came after him. The banks, the government, they stole this man's farm. His son, I'll buy the farm, right? I'll buy the farm. No, we're not going to allow him to buy the farm. They sold that farm. Whoever, the bank or whatever, sold that farm for $150,000 to someone else. He paid $750 for it, right? And I thought to myself, and I think I shared with you some other black father and daughter who are homesteading somewhere, and their white neighbors won't allow them to have peace. And I think to
Yeah, I
myself,
did.
do I want to live in a country that is psychologically damaging, that is toxic to me? Do I want to be in that environment all of my life? And the truth of the matter is, I don't. I just want to wake up and feel safe. I want to wake up and not be, I look at people differently than I did before this
Mhm.
election. I look at people now and I go, did you vote against my interests? Because I voted for everybody's interest, but did you vote against my interest? And that is what Russia wants us to do. It wants us to be a divided country, but we've always been a divided country. And I'm tired of it. I think it is inhumane to ask people to always have to fight for humanity, for to be recognized as humans. I saw some white person somewhere who said, I see Americans as those people who have come from Europe. I said to myself, well, what about the native of the indigenous people that were here? Certainly you would consider them to be American, right? Right. And so I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with the psychological pathology of this country all of my life.
100% agree with you. And when you mentioned the generational trauma piece, we have not gotten away from traumatizing every generation here in the United States with some other "am I safe" issue, right? So, like, every generation in the United States has had to suffer with, and this includes every, it doesn't matter if you're white, brown, black, uh, at I'm saying just colors, right? It doesn't matter what racial or ethnic background you have. We have traumatized you. We have traumatized women. We have traumatized our queer community. And what does that do to us generationally? We carry that because we've learned that, like the pain of your mother, your father, you carry that in your DNA. We are such a traumatized group of individuals. It is why we're so easily manipulated. Like, if you think about what our country actually was built from, we were built from people who were escaping trauma, right? So then we come here and we traumatize each other and we just continue this pot of trauma. When are we going to look around and say, you know what, we have more in common than we don't have? Like, when are we going to wake up and realize we have more in common? The middle class has more in common with, the poor communities, the impoverished communities in the United States than they do with the 1%, which is the ultra rich, right? We have more in common with each other than we have differences.
I think
And
you make a good point when you say something, because I was going to push back when you said, well, we've all had trauma. And I was going to say, oh, but you know what? I'm starting to look at racism and hatred really as a pathology. And that when you make people hate, when you raise generation after generation to hate, that is a trauma. That is a trauma because it's based in fear. I fear you for some whatever reason. You are a threat to me, and that is trauma. This country is toxic, and from the moment that it brutalized the indigenous people that lived here, but here's the funny thing. I was thinking the other day, they are doing everything that they can to erase our black history, right? They're doing everything that they can erase the accomplishments of women and minority people in this country, right? and erase I remember some years ago there was a lot of backlash because the school wanted to use a book that portrayed black slave children as playing alongside their white slave masters' children. No, those black children didn't play. They worked, and they were like, that is a realistic representation of what slavery was. They want to whitewash slavery. They want to whitewash the trauma and the negative things that have happened in this country. But then I thought about it. I was like, you could whitewash it if you want. You can erase it if you want. But unfortunately, you just keep doing the same things over and over and over again.
We have to
Over,
under
over
yes, we
again.
have to understand our true history, move beyond that, and begin to heal the trauma in this country. We have to start talking about how do we heal the trauma of racism? How do we stop this infighting? How do we actually listen to what AI is telling us that we need to as a people? As it's not saying like these people need to do this or those people. It's saying we as an American public need to get together and come together, right? Like we've been saying this for over 100 years, come together right now. Oh, under a purpose, Beatles song, like we need to heal ourselves. If we don't heal ourselves, we're always going to be easily divided. I
But
like
you have to understand that you need healing. And here's the thing. You talked about some of the biggest threats, right? The threats that people that bring us together, the threats that bring us together is the dissolving of our Constitution. That is something that every person that is an American citizen that can vote, that it lives in this country, right? That is something that they should be. Those are our protections, right? And so we should be focused on anything that erodes our Constitution, right?
yes.
That's one thing. The other thing is that we you are judged by how you treat the most vulnerable in your society.
100%. That is it. We will be judged as a nation by how we are treating those who cannot speak for themselves, those who are marginalized. Like, this is not who America is.
Yes,
This
it
is
is.
not who we
This
are. Well, you know what? Yes, yes.
it's always been who America
Historically,
is.
we've always been like this, but this is not who we have
But
aimed
this is
and
not the
dreamed to
way
be.
a
This is not our
civilized
dream of America.
this is not the way a civilized society acts, right? I just find it preposterous, right? Is that a word? Preposterous?
Yes, it is.
That we're talking about taking over Greenland, like they have universal health care, right? I think that the biggest things that we should be concerned about: our Constitution, how we take care of our most vulnerable, and education. It's huge. It's
It's
huge.
It's so huge. If you begin to create a very uneducated populace, they're easy to control. It also takes away our job flexibility and ability to move in the job market, right? So if we cannot move around in the job market because we have an uneducated populace, the only thing that we can do and work at is manual labor jobs. And there's nothing wrong with that, but is that what you want to choose for generations moving forward? Because we've fought to have that job mobility. Like our generations before us fought for that, the right to go to college, the right to become educated, the right to think of ideas in bigger ways. And so it is very scary that they're targeting the Constitution. And I just want to say this one thing. I want to remind the police. This is going to sound weird, but I did discover that the policing code of ethics. So where I'm getting this from is the IACP, and it's the International Association of Chiefs of Police. and they have a code of ethics that says that they are there to defend the public, right? So when we think about policing, please remember you are here to protect the public. And our police have a code of ethics that say they are there to protect the Constitution. So as we're seeing all these ICE raids and police also accompanying these raids, police departments, please remember your first priority is the community you serve and the people that are in that community. Your
So,
other priority is the Constitution.
well, you know what? It sounds really. I think that's so rich because you're talking to another Black person, right? So we have never felt the protection of the police. I
Well,
mean,
that's why I'm reminding the police.
well, did you see at Marjorie Taylor Greene's her town hall? And it really disturbed me. I didn't see the whole thing,
I
but two
I
people
can't
were
watch her.
two
She
people
makes
were
me sad
tasered.
inside.
Two people were tasered. And I was really upset. One person was a Black person, and I was really upset that one of the people that tased him, that was in a physical altercation with him, was a Black police officer. And I was like, oh, right. And again, I don't have the full context of everything that happened, but the man said he he physically handled me first. That was before he was tased, right? Because they were removing him, right? He said he physically handled me first, right? And so, and again, and it made me stop to think, like, you know what, the Black people's resistance may look different from white people's resistance, because there have been all sorts of ruckus, at these town halls. But at Marjorie Taylor Greene's, two people were tasered. One was a white man, and one was a Black man. But this is how it begins.
Yes.
This is how it begins, and we have to be more brave now. One of the things that
And
we're
well,
not.
and that's why I'm calling on the police too to question some things as
Well,
they turn up at these events. Because I also saw something, I don't know if you saw this, but it was like some TikTok thing that was going around, or maybe it was Instagram, where ICE was picking up a man out of an elevator and they knocked down a senior citizen during the ruckus. Like this poor old man with a cane. And like another, I think it's another officer of like the court system, because he was at the court to check in the man that they tackled. So it wasn't like he was on the streets either. He was at an actual court to do his check-in for immigration, and they like grabbed him, knocked down another elderly citizen, and no one checked on this poor man, old man laying rolling with his cane.
well,
Like the other officer who came over wasn't even like, "Yo, is like
well,
that man looked injured. I hope he's okay."
here's the thing.
Question those ICE officers, police officers, as you see ruckuses happening.
What we have to do is ask all people who are here to protect, in terms, and also in terms of our army, our
Mhm.
our our armed forces. They may be asked to do some things that are morally wrong
And against our Constitution.
and against our Constitution. And I hope that there are enough. And see, there is a move. Trump wants an all-white army. He wants an all-white. He wants Hitler's army. He wants Hitler's generals. He said that, right? He would love to have them. And so those folks who are in our armed services, they have to hold the line. Here's the thing: we all have to hold the line. We
We
all
do.
do. We cannot. This is not something that we can bury our heads to.
Including my healthcare people. Like places that used to be safe for, marginalized folks to, just authentically share information are no longer safe. Like, for healthcare people, what will we do when they show up to take people away? Will we hold the line? I don't know, but I'm imploring us to, because we all take a code of honor. We all recite different honor codes saying that we serve the people first. That includes nurses, doctors, police officers, firefighters. We are first responders in many cases. How will we protect our communities and societies? You can't just follow an order. You have to think about the Constitution and the moral ethics of what you're being asked to do. We do not want to look back on today and say things like, well, I was following an order.
I
Well,
think
I was following.
I think that, when you mention all of those, those positions, all of those industries, I think about the number of people who are, see, I think one of the things that we have to reckon with as a country is that there are people that just hate people because of the color of their skin. And I think one of the things that people have to do is question their own beliefs. You
Yeah.
have to really look deep into your heart as a human being, because we all have our own prejudices. We all have our own bigotries. We all do, right? But you really have to look deep in your heart and really see, do I really have a heart for other people and that people who don't look like me? And if I don't, right? See, these are the things that when we do corporate DEI, trainings or whatever the case may be, but people really, this problem right now that we're facing in America, it's a white people problem. If you've got people in your family that were, and again, I don't dislike Trump because he's a Republican. I think his policies, I think he lacks moral character. And if you have people in your family that voted for him, or friends that voted and supported him, and you didn't, you have an obligation as a white person to have real conversations with them. Because me in my black form is never going to change their hearts and minds.
Mm.
It hasn't happened in the last 400 years. But these are the conversations that really need to happen within the white people in this country.
You make a really great point. At first, I was going to be like, I don't agree with you. This isn't a white problem. It's an everybody problem. But I do agree with you. Now that I heard the whole thing out, because we can't because of the color of our skin, there's an automatic sort of like, I'm not going to listen to this person. So yes, we do need white people who are supportive of this idea and do not believe what is going on, to have those really heartfelt conversations, because already you've got a better foot in the door to have that conversation with someone than anyone who looks like Melonya and I. Like, it's just not going to happen. And for men, I'm going to do a call in to men. You need to have conversations with other men when we talk about, why did the SAVE Act pass? Like, why have acts against women passed? What does this mean when we think about like how men are not supporting women in some of these issues? So if you are truly an ally to the cause, it's time to start, really questioning those people in your family, those people in your friends groups who are like, yeah, I love what he's doing. Like so I try never to fight with, or not, I'm not going to call it fighting with, like, the comments, sections in social media. I try not to get like lost in the sauce there. But the other day I did, in one of my autism groups, because someone was like, RFK is on the right path. Right. And so I was like, why? Like, what are you doing? And like, it was interesting because I wrote something back to this person, and I didn't realize they were also autistic, and I was very vulnerable, and I said, "Look, I'm autistic. I don't agree with this. I don't want to be cured. I don't want to be changed." And they wrote back to me and they said, "Well, and their answer to me was less vitriol ridden and less angry than their answers calling other people stupid. And they were like, because I put some facts in there, and I said I was, and they said I'm autistic too. And really, what I keyed in on with RFK's statement was the alleviation of some of the symptoms and issues that I have struggled with in my life. And he said, I am really interested in just understanding where does the root of this come from. And so I can understand that, because there is a part of me that wonders, like, what is like, why, like many years ago, what did go on with the genetic pathway of my family that like this shifted? What was the purpose of this shift? Because there's always a purpose in mother nature, like why she creates things. Like there is a purpose for like why our brains think the way that they do. And so I wonder, like, what is that? Are we the innovators? Are we the thinkers? Because we do think a little bit outside of, the social norms of how you would think about things. And so why aren't we big socializers? Maybe there was some reason for that. So, but it was an interesting conversation, because I was gonna write back and just be like, you're so dumb. But instead I was very like, kind of vulnerable in my comment to him. Like I talked more about like, this is why I don't think this is right, from the perspective of I'm someone he's targeting. And then the person admitted that they were also in that group, and that, why they felt like he was still on a good path. They didn't say he was on a good path afterwards, but
I think, and I think from a couple of episodes ago with you, and you had a different opinion than I did, and I became really incensed, and I learned from that moment that I have to be comfortable hearing differing opinions, even if the opinion is we don't have tolerance for each other anymore. We don't have tolerance for each other anymore. And I don't know how much tolerance I can have for people who are filled with hatred, right?
well, there's a scientific reason why that is going on. Right, because if you're at here because you're stressed about a million different things and worrying about efficiency, you have no tolerance for the person who pushes you above that, right? So, like, if I'm chronically functioning, and I believe American society has been functioning at the, like, we're just getting by, anything that throws that off can automatically send you into and I'm talking financially, emotionally, like, all of those things. I think many of us have just been scraping by. And we've known this for a long time about Americans. We are not big savers. We're into instant gratification, right? We're into the idea of credit cards and loans that started here with us. So if you are constantly living at the edge of your means and needs, you are going to be here. So it's so easy for us to have no tolerance for anything that disagrees with us, because that's one more thing that's setting us off. Like if I'm constantly feeling like, it's very easy for us to get triggered.
I,
And
I remember a conversation that we had after one of our episodes, one of our podcasts, where I cried with you because I I shared that I did not want to leave the planet with hate in my heart. And I'll be honest with you. Every day I have to fight with myself not to hate the people who put us in this situation. I have to fight every day not to hate people because they're undereducated or they are misinformed and lied to. Um, or have hate in their hearts that made them vote not only against my best interest but against their own. And because I, like I said, I don't want to spend my, to answer your question, would I leave? Potentially, if I had the means to leave and I could safely take my dog somewhere, I would, but I don't. So I have to stay here and I have to fight. But I am very angry and I have to fight on a daily basis, not to hate people who have turned my last years of my life into a living hell.
Melonya, that was. Would you go to Norway? I would move to Norway. It's cold, but I would go there.
I, I just want to go someplace.
If there are Norwegian employers listening,
I'm good. I had a friend of mine who I worked with some years ago. She lives in Louisiana, and we're on Facebook, and she does some traveling, and she's in Fiji now. And she said in one of
you can
her,
go to Fiji.
yeah, she said, she goes, I choose places to visit where people are kind. And that was so, and I know her as a human being, and she's a kind human being. And she was sharing, her, sending, little snippets of her trip while she was there, and how she's staying with the family, and how, and I thought to myself, I want to live in a world that's kind. That's all
Absolutely.
I want, is to live in a world that's kind.
So I'm gonna shameless plug if there are any because you know what, I'm gonna put it out there. Shameless plug. If there are any organizations in kind countries who want fantastic, like Melonya and I are super smart. Okay, we're so smart. Um,
If I was smart, I'd have left this country a long time ago.
You know what my mother told me the other day? She said, I made a mistake when we didn't leave and move to Canada because I wanted to go to Canada. So I thought that was interesting. But like, if there are countries out there, like not countries, but if there's organizations not in the US who want to work with us, we are 100%. I have a passport. I'm
You do.
ready.
You have to.
I'm ready.
I'm,
My whole family has a passport.
we
I'm
have to.
not saying I'm gonna drag them with me, but,
Come on, let's go.
let's go.
Let's get out.
My eyes on Norway because 'cause I'm tall. And you know when you talked about, like, people have biases? You ready? This is terrible. I have a short bias. I have a
Oh,
short bias. Yeah,
right. I'm 5'3".
yeah. My mom's 5 foot, if any. I think that's why I have a short bias.
You
She's
know,
very, very powerful. It
that,
seems like too much power in a small container,
because
and I think
that's
that's
how
why I
we
have a
roll.
bias.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny. Well, we are at the hour, and it is, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Maureen Timmons, for hanging
That's
out
my
with
mom,
us.
by the
I
way.
know. Thank you for hanging out with us.
You know what? She is such a cutie patootie. Like she's ready to go protesting, and I am so frightened for her because my mother is a small little Jewish woman. And she's just like ready to take action. She's ready to fight. She's like, I'm ready to fight for my children, my grandchildren. Like, I'm ready to fight for the people in my family who have autism. My grandfather went to war, like he enrolled her father. He enrolled before he was even allowed to because he was so intent to protect the idea of democracy. Like she is just like a little powerhouse, and I'm like, Mom, please don't, please. Like I'm so frightened for her because I'm seeing older people knocked down and brutalized. That's why I was like, please, police, don't knock my mama down. Like that's really what I'm talking about.
But we all should have that fire, and thank you for having that fire. We all should have that fire in us. We all need to have that fire, and all of us can show up in whatever way that we can show up. But you can show up by making calls to the people who represent you on our federal government. You can let your voice be heard. You can leave email messages for them. You can go to their websites and you can communicate with them. And you need to let them know what you want and what they need to do. That's one. You need to organize in your own communities, making certain that women especially marginalized women, have all of the tools that they need to vote and that they know how to vote. So when they cast a ballot, it is not discarded for some stupid reason, right? These are things
Yes.
that we can do. You can participate in economic boycotts. We can start starving the oligarchs. And at some point, we are going to have a national strike, several of them, and shut down the economy. That has to happen.
Yes.
So get ready, y'all.
Get ready. Get ready.
Well, thank you for joining us. MT Fridays. We will be back next week talking about whatever it is we talk about. But until then, stay curious.
Yes.